There's a difference between being smart and being wise. Smart gets you in the room. Wise keeps you there. In a world that constantly shifts the rules for women, the truly empowered ones don't just adapt, they anchor themselves in principles. Today, we're not just talking about rules, we're uncovering the mindset behind the most confident, purpose-driven women you'll ever meet. Because smart women, they don't break these 7 rules ever. And once you understand why, you won't either. You know, one of the most powerful things I've ever learned is this. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And the same goes for how we live. When you start with why, you move differently. You speak with more intention. You choose your battles more wisely. And perhaps most importantly, you stop chasing what doesn't serve you. That's exactly what smart women understand. They don't just follow the rules, they follow purpose. They start with why every single time. Because when you know your why, your direction becomes clear. Think about it. How many times have we seen someone work so hard to get the perfect job, build the perfect image, chase the perfect life, only to feel empty once they get there? It's because they started with what they wanted, what they thought success looked like. But smart women, the ones who are anchored and intentional, they flip the process. They start from the inside out. They ask, why do I want this job? Not just, what does it pay? They ask, why does this relationship matter to me? Not just, how does it look from the outside? That kind of clarity creates power. Because when you're anchored in why, you're not shaken by what other people think. You don't need to measure your worth by comparison. You stop trying to fit into molds that were never made for you. Instead, you create your own framework. You see it in how they lead. Smart women don't lead by demanding attention, they lead by offering vision. They walk into a room and people listen, not because they shouted the loudest, but because their presence is rooted in something deeper. Purpose speaks louder than volume, and people sense that. Now here's the thing, starting with why doesn't mean you'll have all the answers. It's not a shortcut to perfection. It means you have a compass. It means when things get difficult, and they will, you're not left questioning your worth or your path. You just return to your center. You return to your purpose. And that realigns everything else. It's tempting to start with how. How do I get promoted? How do I get more followers? How do I look more confident? And those questions matter, but only after you ask why. Because how without why is like driving fast with no destination. You might cover a lot of ground, but you're not going anywhere that fulfills you. The smartest women I've met, they don't look for shortcuts. They don't follow trends just because they're popular. They're not chasing approval. They're chasing meaning. And in doing that, they often inspire others to do the same. That's real leadership. That's real influence. It's not about being impressive. It's about being impactful. And when your actions are rooted in why, your decisions change. You stop settling. You stop negotiating with your values. You stop over-explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand you. You start choosing what aligns. And you stop apologizing for it. Because you know what you stand for. You know where you're headed. And that allows you to move through life with grace, with strength, and with an unshakable sense of identity. That's the power of starting with why. That's the first rule smart women never break. They live from the inside out, not the outside in. There's a rule smart women never break, and it's this. They never compromise self-respect for validation. Not ever. Because the minute you start needing someone else's approval to feel whole, you've already given away the most valuable thing you have, your sense of self. Now, we all want to be liked. We all want to be accepted. That's natural. We're social creatures. But there's a difference between connection and dependency. One uplifts you, the other empties you. Smart women understand that the moment you start bending your identity to fit someone else's expectations, you lose the very essence of who you are. It starts subtly. A comment here, a glance there. Someone implies you're too much or not enough, and before you know it, you're shrinking, editing yourself, performing instead of living. And it feels like you're playing a role that wasn't even written by you. That's not empowerment, that's entrapment. And the smartest women avoid it entirely by building their validation from within, not from the applause of others. Because let's be honest, external validation is unreliable. It changes with trends, with moods, with opinions that have nothing to do with your worth. One day you're praised, the next day you're questioned. Smart women don't ride that roller coaster. They step off and build solid ground under their feet. Ground made of integrity, clarity, and self-respect. You can feel it in how they carry themselves. They don't chase attention, they command presence. They don't over-explain their choices, because they know not everyone needs to understand them. They don't shapeshift to fit into spaces that weren't designed with their voice in mind. Instead, they create new spaces, ones where truth can breathe and dignity can thrive. And here's the hard truth, not everyone will like that. Not everyone will be comfortable when you stop seeking their approval. But that's okay. That's not your problem to solve. That's their discomfort to wrestle with. Because when you honor your self-respect, you invite others to meet you there or move on. It's not about arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better than anyone. It's about knowing that no title, no relationship, no amount of likes or compliments can replace the deep, quiet confidence that comes from respecting yourself. That's what keeps you grounded when life gets loud. That's what helps you walk away from what doesn't serve you, even when it's tempting to stay. And we're not taught this enough. We're taught to be agreeable, to not rock the boat, to keep people comfortable. But comfort is not the goal. Growth is. Truth is. And self-respect is the foundation for both. Smart women don't ask, "What will they think of me?" They ask, "What do I think of myself after this choice?" That question changes everything. When you value your self-respect more than someone's fleeting approval, you start making decisions that align with your long-term peace, not just your short-term image. You stop posting to impress. You start speaking to express. You stop dressing for reaction. You start showing up with intention. And it's not easy. It takes courage to walk in a room and not perform, to tell someone no when they expected yes, to disappoint someone in order to stay true to yourself. But that's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it rare, and that's why smart women never let the hunger for validation dilute their voice. You don't need permission to be whole. You don't need consensus to be clear. And you don't need applause to know you matter. Because when you've built your self-worth on something internal, something rooted in purpose and self-awareness, no one can take that away from you. They didn't give it to you and they can't remove it. That's the rule. Smart women never compromise self-respect for validation because they know the cost is far too high. We've all had those moments, the pause in your gut, the subtle discomfort, the unspoken, something's off that you can't quite explain. And yet, how often do we dismiss it? How often do we rationalize it, smooth it over, tell ourselves, maybe I'm just being too sensitive? But smart women don't do that. They don't ignore red flags. Not because they're paranoid, but because they've learned the cost of silence. They've learned that intuition is not noise, it's wisdom. Intuition is one of the most powerful tools we have, and yet it's one of the most overlooked, especially for women. Society has conditioned many to doubt their own inner voice, to question what they feel, to make excuses for others, to call manipulation miscommunication, and to label disrespect as someone just having a bad day. But smart women trust that feeling, that twinge, that early warning. They understand that instincts are not something to apologize for, they're something to protect. Here's the truth. Red flags are rarely loud. They start small. A tone in a conversation, a delay in honesty, a disregard for your boundaries that's played off as a joke. And if you bring it up, they might say, "You're overthinking it," or "Don't be so dramatic." But smart women know that the earlier you spot a pattern, the easier it is to walk away before damage is done. They don't wait for things to get worse to justify their decision. They trust what they felt the first time. You see, people often show you who they are very early. It's just that we're not always ready to believe it. We want to give the benefit of the doubt. We want to believe the best. And that's not a bad thing. It speaks to our empathy. But empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. Smart women know the difference between being compassionate and being a doormat, between patience and denial, between hope and self-betrayal. And it's not just in relationships, it's everywhere. In business, in friendships, in how we're treated at work. Smart women have trained themselves to listen closely to what's said and what's not said. They don't justify behavior that conflicts with their values. They don't compromise their peace for the sake of not rocking the boat. They understand that peace built on ignoring problems isn't peace, it's quiet chaos. Now, I'm not saying smart women are perfect. They've missed red flags before, just like anyone else. But they've learned. They've felt the sting of betrayal that could have been prevented. They've lived through the exhaustion of trying to fix what was never healthy in the first place. And because of that, they've sharpened their radar. They've made a decision. Never again. Never again will I abandon myself just to avoid discomfort. Never again will I prioritize potential over patterns. And that's what it comes down to, patterns. Smart women don't fall for potential. They look at consistency. They look at how someone shows up over time. They ask, does this align with who I am, with what I value? And if the answer is no, they don't linger. They don't romanticize what could be. They respect what is. They act not out of fear, but out of self-respect. Trusting your instincts doesn't mean you close yourself off from the world. It means you open your eyes to it. It means you give yourself permission to walk away when something feels wrong, even if you can't explain why yet. That's not weakness, that's maturity. That's leadership. That's strength. And sometimes it'll feel lonely. Sometimes you'll walk away from situations that others don't understand. People may say, "It didn't seem that bad," or "Maybe you should have waited." But smart women don't measure their decisions by how they'll be perceived. They measure them by how they'll feel sleeping at night. They choose alignment over approval, truth over tolerance, self-trust over external validation. Because if you can't trust yourself, who can you trust? Smart women have made peace with that question. They've stopped silencing their inner voice to keep the peace. They've stopped hoping people will change if they just try harder. They've stopped betraying themselves for the illusion of connection. They've learned that the cost of ignoring a red flag is almost always greater than the discomfort of acting on it. There's something deeply powerful about a woman who walks into a room and doesn't look around to compare herself. She looks around to connect. She's not checking who's better dressed, who has more attention, or who's ahead. She's grounded, rooted, confident in her own journey. Smart women understand that the energy we spend trying to outdo each other is energy stolen from building something greater together. So they don't compete, they collaborate. They don't tear down, they build up. And they don't imitate, they innovate. We live in a culture that thrives on comparison. It's everywhere: social media, boardrooms, friend groups, even families. There's this subtle pressure to be the best woman in the room, as if our worth is measured by someone else's weakness. But smart women have seen through that lie. They know that confidence isn't about being above anyone. It's about being so secure in who you are that you're no longer threatened by who someone else is. They don't see another woman's success as a threat. They see it as proof. Proof that it's possible. Proof that the world is big enough. that there's space at the table for more than one kind of brilliance, beauty, voice, or victory. Smart women look at someone else winning and think, if she can, I can. Not out of envy, but out of belief. See, when we compete from a place of insecurity, we lose twice. We lose the connection we could have had, and we lose the chance to become more ourselves. But when we uplift from a place of strength, everyone wins. The truth is, it takes nothing away from you to cheer for someone else. And smart women know that when they lift another woman, they're not lowering themselves, they're lifting the standard. Insecure people compete. Secure people create. And that's what smart women are doing. They're creating space, creating support, creating systems that work for all of us, not just a few. They understand that when we isolate ourselves in the name of being the best, we also isolate ourselves from the ideas, energy, and community that make us better. They don't waste time sizing others up. They're too focused on growing into the next version of themselves. They stay in their own lane not because they don't see others, but because they don't need to. Their path is personal. Their timeline is unique. Their purpose is not a copy-paste of anyone else's. And that kind of clarity makes comparison irrelevant. And here's the interesting thing, when you're truly in your lane, when you're doing the work that's aligned with who you are, you'll naturally stand out, not by force, but by essence. People will notice not just what you do, but how you do it. Your integrity, your authenticity, your consistency. And that's the kind of influence that lasts, not popularity built on performance, but respect built on substance. Smart women know that the real competition isn't with other sits with who they were yesterday. They're too focused on evolving to be distracted by the noise of comparison. They've learned that envy is often just unspoken admiration turned sideways. So instead of comparing, they complement. Instead of feeling behind, they learn. Instead of assuming scarcity, they embody abundance. And because of that mindset, they attract the right people, the right friendships, the right opportunities. Because confidence is magnetic, kindness is magnetic, collaboration is magnetic. It's the kind of energy that doesn't just build influence, it builds trust. And trust is the foundation of anything meaningful. There's a reason why we remember the women who helped us, who saw us, who gave us a chance. It's not just what they said, it's how they made us feel. That's the legacy smart women build every day, not by pushing others out of the way, but by reaching out a hand and saying, "Come with me. There's room for both of us." Because they know the truth. We rise higher when we rise together. One of the most powerful things a woman can do is speak the truth, her truth even when her voice shakes. Because speaking your truth isn't about being loud, it's about being real. And smart women have learned that staying silent just to be accepted is a form of self-abandonment. They understand that no amount of approval is worth losing yourself. It's easy to let fear of judgment become a muzzle. We worry about being misunderstood, disliked, or dismissed. But here's the reality. No matter what you say, someone will have something to say about it. That's just the world we live in. So the question isn't, will I be judged? The question is, will I be honest anyway? Smart women don't chase universal approval because they've realized something profound. Clarity always invites criticism. The clearer you are about what you believe, what you value, what you stand for, the more visible you become. And visibility will always make you a target to someone. But here's the trade-off. They'd rather be disliked for being authentic than liked for being a watered-down version of themselves. There's a kind of quiet confidence in that. Not arrogance, not defiance, just a grounded sense of self. A knowing that what they carry inside is valuable. That their story, their perspective, Their voice matters not just when it's perfect, not just when it's polished, but especially when it's honest. They've stopped asking, "What will people think of me?" and started asking, "What will I think of myself if I stay quiet?" That shift changes everything, because when your sense of self comes from within, judgment loses its grip. You no longer need permission to show up fully. You give it to yourself. Think about the impact of one woman choosing to speak with courage. It creates ripple effects. It gives others permission to be honest too. We've all felt it the moment someone says what we were all thinking, but we're too afraid to voice. And suddenly, the room breathes easier. That's what truth does. It sets the tone. It sets people free. Now, that doesn't mean smart women say whatever comes to mind with no filter. They're not reckless. They're intentional. They speak truth with kindness, not ego. They challenge systems, not people. They stand firm without standing over others. Because they understand the purpose of truth isn't to win arguments, it's to invite change. There's also a kind of discernment involved. Speaking your truth doesn't always mean shouting it from the rooftops. Sometimes it's just saying no when you want to say no, or yes when it scares you, or I disagree when the room is silent, or this isn't okay when everyone else is pretending it is. It's the small moments of honesty that build the muscle for the big ones. And yes, it can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it costs relationships, jobs, opportunities. But smart women have decided that peace with themselves is worth more than peace with others built on pretense. They've stopped living for applause and started living for alignment. And here's the thing, people may not always agree with them, but they respect them. Because truth, when spoken with integrity, commands respect. It resonates, it cuts through noise, it inspires. And that's the kind of leadership that outlasts trends, likes, or follower counts. We've been taught that fitting in is safe, but it's a false safety. What's truly safe, what's truly powerful is being someone who doesn't flinch in the face of judgment, who doesn't edit themselves to make others comfortable. Because that's not safety, that's self-erasure. Smart women choose another path. The path of presence over performance, honesty over harmony, growth over comfort. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Because when a woman speaks her truth, she doesn't just free herself, she lights a way for others to do the same. Love is not supposed to be a place where we disappear. It's supposed to be where we're most fully seen. And smart women know that any relationship that requires them to shrink, dim their light, or silence their truth isn't love, it's control dressed up as affection. They've learned that real love doesn't ask them to become less. It invites them to become more. It's easy, at first, to mistake approval for affection. To believe that as long as someone likes you, likes being around you, then it must be good. But here's the danger in that. If someone only likes the version of you that fits into their comfort zone, they don't truly love you. They love the convenience of your silence. And that is not a foundation for a healthy connection. Smart women don't shrink anymore. Maybe they used to. Maybe at one point they bit their tongue to keep the peace. Maybe they downplayed their ambitions, their joy, their intuition, just to be more digestible. But that's how they learned. That's how they saw clearly that no amount of shrinking ever leads to true intimacy. It only creates quiet resentment, a kind of invisible erosion of self that eats away at your joy, one compromise at a time. When you constantly make yourself small for someone else's comfort, eventually you look in the mirror and don't recognize who you've become. Smart women have been there, and they decided not to live there. They stopped apologizing for dreaming big. They stopped hiding their intelligence so someone else wouldn't feel threatened. They stopped pretending they didn't care just to seem easygoing. Because they realized Every time you contort yourself for love, you teach yourself that your full self isn't worthy of it. And that's a dangerous belief to carry. Instead, they started asking better questions. Not just, do they love me, but do they love all of me? The messy parts, the bold parts, the inconvenient truths, the ambition, the boundaries, the voice that sometimes disagrees. Because if someone only loves you when you're agreeable, that's not love, it's a transaction. Real love doesn't require shrinking. It requires showing up. Fully. Authentically. And yes, that can be uncomfortable for both people. But smart women know that discomfort is where real connection begins. It's where you build something sustainable, not just something easy. They're not interested in relationships where their growth is seen as a threat. They want partnerships where their evolution is celebrated, where their strength isn't intimidating, it's inspiring, where their independence isn't questioned, it's admired. And if that kind of relationship isn't present, they're willing to walk away. Not because they're cold or unloving, but because they love themselves too much to settle for less. Walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you honored your value. It means you knew what you brought to the table. It means you decided your wholeness mattered more than someone else's comfort. That kind of decision takes courage, but it also creates space for the right people to enter your life. People who don't ask you to shrink but to shine. People who don't flinch at your truth. People who can hold your strength without trying to weaken it. It's not about being perfect. It's about being whole. And smart women have learned that wholeness is their responsibility. No one can give it to them, and no one should take it from them. That's why they choose carefully. Not from fear, but from clarity. They've stopped trying to earn love. They've started choosing it. And maybe that's the heart of it. Love, real love, is a choice. Not just a feeling. It's a choice to see someone fully and say, yes, I'm here for all of it. Smart women give that kind of love, and they expect it in return. Not out of entitlement, but out of self-respect. Because they know, if you have to become someone else to be loved, the love you're getting isn't meant for you.